All right, so we're drawing these alkanes on pieces of two-dimensional paper. However, remember that these alkanes have three-dimensional shape. And in particular, an sp3 carbon is a tetrahedral. And so one way we can represent that is have a carbon here, right? And then we'll just draw H's. We can draw two H's in the board, but when we do that, the other two H's are not going to be in the board. So one of them is going to be coming out of the board, and we represent that with a wedge. And then one is going to go into the back of the board, and we represent that with a dash. Again, this wedge means that it's going into the, or coming out of the board. And the dash means that it's going into the back of the board. And so when we're drawing our skeletal structures, there's appropriate ways to use these wedges and these dashes, and there's inappropriate ways to use them. So in this case, in methane, it doesn't really matter when you use the wedge or the dash. Since they're all the same groups on the carbon, it actually doesn't matter. But there's going to be times when we want to show three-dimensional shape, and it'll get more important when we learn about stereochemistry later on. But here's basically the okay ways to draw these wedges and these dashes. And what has to happen is this wedge and this dash have to be next to each other. So for example, we could draw it like this top drawing we have here, except now it's going to have two of them be methyl groups and then two hydrogens, right? So you notice that the wedge and the dash are right next to each other. It doesn't matter which one's going off to the left, which one's going off to the right. They both represent the same picture. And you don't have to have the wedge and the dash on the top. You could have them on the side. You can have them down on the bottom. That kind of thing. What's not okay is to not have the wedge and the dash next to each other. So for example, something like this, right? This wedge and the dash are not next to each other. There's a regular line in between them. So that's not okay. Same with maybe something like this. Again, that's not okay because the wedge and the dash are not next to each other. And then not only should they be next to each other, they should look something like a tetrahedral. So for example, if you drew something like this, that would also be not okay. The wedge and the dash are next to each other, but it just really does not look good. So just practice drawing some wedges and dashes here and there.